step on the mic, final words in full effect. Sports talk fire that you know we won't neglect. Heartbeat sick with the beat and the play-by-play. We break it down, every move, every win, every say. Opinions clash, but we stay on the grind. Debate the game until the clock unwinds. Hands in the air when the verdict is shown. Final word anthem, let the whole world know. Final word energy, turn it up right now. Fans going crazy, voice should take, voice show take. We own the moment, breaking every zone. Final word glory, let the world know. Hot takes ready, debate steady.
Good evening, everybody. We are coming to you live from Atlanta, where just moments ago, the Chicago Bears captured their second straight championship, beating the Salt Lake City Aviators 51-44 in one of the most explosive, high-octane Super Bowls ever played. Caleb Williams, 513 yards, 6 touchdowns, 40 out of 46 passes. We've got a lot to unpack. This game was wild. It was chaotic. It was brilliant. And it was decided in the final seconds. Marcus, Tyrell, Connor, let's set the stage. Before we get into the quarter-by-quarter breakdown, what did this game feel like to you?
Jordan, I'll tell you what it felt like. It felt like we were watching an offensive masterpiece. And I don't use that word lightly. This wasn't one of those games where blown coverages inflate a box score. This was elite players being elite. Caleb was sensational, obviously, but Bo Nix matched him throw for most of this game. Chris Lyons ran like he wanted to rip the Lombardi out of Chicago's hands. And Timothy Evans, that man had one of the greatest deep ball performances we've ever seen in a championship setting. And nothing felt accidental. Every play felt intentional. 2 offenses going toe-to-toe, trusting their stars to make plays. This was a chess match at track meet speed.
Marcus, you're spot on. This wasn't about a team collapsing, and this was about 2 teams imposing their strengths. Salt Lake was not scared, not answering Odunze's touchdown with a field goal, not punting. First play from scrimmage, Claret hits them for 48 yards. That's a statement. They had a plan, they had a real identity, and they kept landing shots for almost the entire game. I mean, they matched the champs for 58 minutes. That doesn't happen unless you're legit. This was a duel. Every possession was a counterpunch.
And I want to add something. For large stretches, the Aviators were the better team. 2 Caleb turnovers, a pick 6, a near touchdown before the half. They had opportunities to go up double digits with the ball coming back after halftime. The problem is they didn't close the door. Against a team this good, against a quarterback this good, you give them an inch, they take a mile, and Chicago did exactly that.
So let's get into the details. Let's break down how this game unfolded because it was a roller coaster. Let's start with the first quarter. Chicago sends a message first drive. Caleb Williams opens the game with precision. He hits Rome Odunze for a 14-yard touchdown, putting the Bears up 7-0 in just minutes. A statement drive. Clean, fast, surgical. Aviators respond with a 48-yard haymaker, Salt Lake's first play from scrimmage. Maurice Claret bursts for 48 yards, gashing Chicago's front and flipping field position instantly. Bo Nix finishes the job with a 2-yard TD to Spencer James. Tie game, 7-7. Chicago answers. Loveland takes over early. On the next drive, Caleb hits Colston Loveland twice for 40 combined yards, setting up Rashawn Johnson's 1-yard touchdown. Chicago leads 14-7. That ends the quarter.
What jumped out was the aggressiveness. Both teams came out throwing haymakers. Chicago said, "We're the champs." And Salt Lake said, "So what? That's rare."
That Claret run changed the temperature of the building. You could feel Salt Lake settling in, realizing they belonged.
This was a preview of the entire night. Both offenses were ready to explode from the jump.
The second quarter, the most chaotic of the game. Let's break it down cleanly. Salt Lake drives, but settles for 3. A long, efficient Aviators drive stalls on 3rd and 1 when Bo Nix is sacked. They kick a field goal. Aviators 11, Bears 14. On the next Bears possession, Dallas Turner drops into coverage, jumps Caleb's pass, and takes it 55 yards to the house. Aviators go for 2 and fail. Salt Lake 17, Chicago 14. Momentum swinging. Bears driving. Then another disaster. With 2 minutes left, Caleb hits a cane for 19 and 13 yards. Bears look steady again. Then rolling right, Caleb forces a throw. Jeff Lynch intercepts it. Salt Lake ball. Stadium is shaking. Salt Lake strikes. Evans deep with 20 seconds left. Bo Nix hits Timothy Evans for a 42-yard bomb. Salt Lake 24, Chicago 14. This is the moment the champs look cracked. But Chicago only needs 17 seconds. Caleb to Luther Burden, the third, for 32 yards. The very next play, Caleb to Luther Burden, the third, for 33 yards as time expires. Halftime score, Aviators 24, Bears 21. A season-saving drive, especially the fact that the Salt Lake Aviators could have been up 2 possessions going into the third with the ball with a chance to put this game out of reach, but their defense couldn't hold the line for 17 seconds.
Jordan, the second quarter, was the single most important 15-minute stretch of this entire football season. This quarter took Chicago to the brink of collapse and then somehow gave them a lifeline. It was chaos, pure chaos. Let me walk you through how dramatic this swing really was. We start with Salt Lake putting together a long, disciplined drive. They're running the ball. They're working underneath. They're winning the line of scrimmage. That's not flashy, but it is winning football. And on 3rd and 1, Chicago sends pressure, finally gets a stop, forces the field goal. It's 11-14. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, Salt Lake is settling. Chicago survived. But then the whole quarter flips in about 10 seconds. Caleb drops back on the next series, and Dallas Turner, who, by the way, played like a top 5 defensive talent in this league tonight, drops into coverage, diagnoses the route before the ball even leaves Caleb's hand, jumps it, and takes it 55 yards to the house. That wasn't luck. That was film study and athleticism merging. Suddenly, it's 17-14, and the Aviators sideline is on fire. And then Chicago starts to unravel. 2 minutes before halftime, the Bears are trying to settle back in. Caleb hits a chain on consecutive plays, really good composure after a huge mistake. And then he commits the cardinal sin. He throws across his body on the move into traffic. Jeff Lynch reads it like a children's book. Interception number 2. Now this is the moment I'm thinking Chicago is done, because Salt Lake now has the momentum and the ball and the clock. And Jordan, the worst possible scenario for the Bears is Salt Lake scoring here and getting the ball again after halftime. And that's exactly what Salt Lake sets up to do. Bo Nix drops an absolute dime to Timothy Evans, 42 yards, perfect placement. That stadium erupted. It felt like the champs were finally breaking. But then the last 17 seconds, my God, Caleb Williams, after playing his worst quarter in months, suddenly turns into a surgeon again. First play, 32 yards to LB, no panic, no hesitation. Then he goes right back to him, 33 yards, touchdown. And in a game of inches, that 17-second sequence saved the season. The Aviators should have gone into halftime up 10 or 14 with possession. Instead, they're up only 24-21, and Chicago has life. This quarter showed why football is the greatest unpredictable drama on earth.
Marcus, I think everything you just laid out is spot on. But let me add some context about what this quarter revealed from a strategic and emotional perspective, because it was more than just fireworks. This quarter exposed both teams' DNA. Salt Lake looked poised. That early field goal drive wasn't a disappointment, it was a message. They showed they could dictate pace. They showed they could line up and bully the champs. They showed they could win on early downs. They showed they weren't intimidated by Chicago's front. That matters. Then the pick 6, that was a culture-changing moment for Salt Lake. You could feel the sideline energy shift. That's when the Aviators realized, we can win this game. We can take the crown. Dallas Turner jumping that route is exactly what defenders mean when they say they want to steal a possession. That was not just a turnover. It was a psychological earthquake. But then you get to the part that impressed me most. Bo Nix and that offense after the Lynch interception. You want to talk about controlling your moment? That's what Salt Lake did. They knew they had a chance to go up big. They knew they had the ball after halftime. And instead of getting conservative, they attacked. They went right after the secondary with Evans, who had a speed mismatch all night. And that throw, that 42-yarder, is an NFL throw. That's a quarterback reading the coverage, holding the safety with his eyes, and dropping it perfectly down the sideline. That is uncoachable poise. But now we get to Chicago. Chicago. And their final 17 seconds, that's championship medal. That's culture. That's what separates contenders from champions. Most teams kneel out the half there. Most quarterbacks try to get in field goal range, settle down, get to the locker room. Not Caleb, not Luke Getsy, not this offense. They went for 7 and they got it. And here's the thing that really stood out to me. The Bears didn't rush. They didn't panic. They didn't chuck it up. They ran actual offense in 17 seconds, 2 plays, perfect execution. The second quarter showed 2 things simultaneously. Salt Lake is good enough to knock out the champs, but Chicago is built to survive the knockout blow. That's why this quarter was so special.
All right, let me get into the nuts and bolts of why this quarter matters, because while it was dramatic, the actual football mechanics behind it tell the real story. First, Salt Lake outplayed Chicago for 14 minutes and 43 seconds, full stop. They controlled field position. They forced 2 turnovers. They outgained them. They confused Caleb for the first time in months. If you take out the last 17 seconds, Salt Lake absolutely dominated. But football isn't about dominating most of the quarter. It's about sequences. It's about leverage moments. And Salt Lake failed at the 2 biggest leverage moments of the game, closing the half and opening the next half. Let's talk specifics. When Salt Lake settled for 3 to make it 11-14, that was fine. But it was also a missed opportunity. They had Chicago on their heels and couldn't finish the drive. That's theme number 1. Then you get the pick 6. That's theme number 2. Salt Lake capitalizing on Chicago's mistakes. They go up 17-14. That's a spark. Then you get the second Caleb pick. And here's where the game should have ended. Because the math says if Salt Lake scores a touchdown and gets the ball after halftime, their win probability skyrockets. They hit Evans for the 42-yard bomb. Great. They take the lead up to 24-14. Amazing. Everything is going exactly how you'd script it if you're an Aviators coach. But then, the final theme, failure to close. The last 17 seconds were catastrophic for Salt Lake's long-term chances. Not just because they gave up a touchdown, but because of when they gave it up. That turned a potential 2-score halftime lead into a 3-point game. That turned a crowd ready to blow the roof off into a crowd gasping. That turned Chicago from wounded to dangerous again. And here's the biggest thing, the emotional swing. Salt Lake had control, Chicago had doubt, then poof, gone. The second quarter didn't just shift momentum, it rewrote the psychology of the entire second half. That's why they lost.
The third quarter, a slugfest. Salt Lake opens the half. With a 62-yard bomb, Bo Nix finds Chris Lyons on a catch and run for 62 yards. Salt Lake 31, Chicago 21, Aviators up 10, Chicago answers. Odunze's second TD, Caleb responds with a composed march finished by a 14-yard TD to Rome Odunze, 2-point conversion good. Salt Lake 31, Chicago 29 Aviators miss the moment. Longway misses an easy FG. Lyons dominates the next drive, setting up a 31-yard attempt. Victor Longway misses it badly. Score stays 31-29 Salt Lake, a costly mistake. Loveland ends the quarter. Hot 2, chunk plays, 20 yards each. And Chicago enters the red zone to end the quarter.
Salt Lake had a chance to put this game in a chokehold, and they didn't. That missed kick haunted them.
Loveland felt like the spark. You could see the momentum swing on those catches.
This quarter was defined by a missed opportunity. Salt Lake let Chicago stay in the fight.
Fourth quarter. Everything on the line, and both teams empty the tank. Chicago takes the lead. Odunze's third TD, Caleb. Odunze 20 yards. Chicago 36, Salt Lake 31. Salt Lake responds. Evans, 58-yard bomb. Nix, Evans deep, Salt Lake 38. Chicago 36, Chicago responds. LB Suai on the RPO, Caleb Burden III. Chicago 43, Salt Lake 38. Salt Lake responds in 2 plays. Evans again, 62 yards. Salt Lake 44, Chicago 44 tie game. The final drive, 4 minutes of legend, 350. DJ Moore, 11 yards, 317. Moore again, 9. Clock. Draining. Tick, 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 tick. 1 o'clock, 3rd and 4th in Loveland, 11 yards. Clutch again, 0-07. A-Chain, 10 yards. Inside the 5, 0-03. Caleb fires to Odunze. Touchdown game. Season. Legacy.
Jordan, the fourth quarter of this game wasn't just great football, it was myth-making. This is the kind of quarter we will talk about 20 years from now. This is the kind of quarter that goes into documentaries, into Hall of Fame presentations, into folklore. Let me start here. Every possession in that quarter felt like the season. Every snap felt like it could swing the Lombardi. And both teams responded to that by playing some of the best offensive football I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. Chicago starts the quarter down, and Caleb immediately says, nope, we're not waiting. We're striking now. He hits Odunze for the 20-yard touchdown, his third of the night. And that throw was perfect. He dropped it into a bucket between the safety and the trailing DB like he was floating it onto a pillow. That gave Chicago the lead back and woke the building up. But Salt Lake, they don't flinch. And that, to me, is what made this quarter so special. On their very next possession, Bo Nix steps up, climbs the pocket, and drops an absolute moonshot to Timothy Evans. 58 yards in stride, untouched. It was poetry. And Evans, that kid wants a highlight reel. He didn't just beat the corner. He left the corner. He ran out of the frame. Then Chicago answers again. Caleb to LB Poise on the RPO. A perfectly timed call, perfectly executed. And that was Chicago saying, if you hit us with explosives, we'll hit you with tempo and precision. It was strategic greatness. But then come the two plays that made me stand up out of my seat. Salt Lake comes right back after the kickoff, and in 2 snaps, Evans is in the end zone again. Another 60-yard bomb. Are you kidding me? That was Randy Moss at his peak. That was Tyreek Hill acceleration with Dez Bryant ball tracking. At that point, I said, this is not normal. This game is played by humans, but this quarter right here is divine. But now, the final drive. This is where Caleb becomes immortal. I've been covering this sport for decades, and I haven't seen many drives like that. 4 minutes left. Tie game, pressure of the world on his shoulders, and that kid plays like he's throwing roots on air. He hits DJ Moore twice to settle the offense. He hits Loveland, Mr. Clutch tonight, on 3rd and 4 to keep everything alive. And then the last 2 plays, the chain throw to set up the kill shot, and the kill shot itself, the dart to Rome Odunze with 3 seconds left. That is a quarterback who decided, we are not going to overtime. We are not giving Salt Lake the ball again. We're ending this on our terms. What Caleb did in that quarter, it's historic. Legendary. It's the kind of stuff kids put on posters. This wasn't just a fourth quarter. This was the birth of a legacy.
Marcus, I feel the same. But let me break this fourth quarter down from a strategic standpoint, because this was like watching 2 offensive coordinators playing chess at hypersonic speed. Chicago opens the quarter with a scoring drive that perfectly illustrates their identity. Every play in that sequence is about leverage. Every route is about putting Odunze in a favorable matchup. They motion him, they stack him, they isolate him, and then, boom, touchdown. Chicago doesn't beat you by accident. They design you to death. But then Salt Lake answers with a completely different brand of football, a violent brand, an explosive brand. Evans' 58-yard touchdown was not scheme. It wasn't trickery. It was pure receiver skill. It was release, acceleration, stacking the corner, and tracking the ball over his shoulder. That's rare. That's elite. Then Chicago comes back and hits the RPO touchdown to LB3. And that's a brilliant call because Salt Lake was sitting heavy on inside zone. They were anticipating a more conservative response. Chicago used their aggression against them. That's A+ play calling, but this is where the quarter becomes special. Salt Lake refuses to fade. 2 plays after the kickoff, Nix goes to Evans again for 62 yards, and I want people to understand that's not a lucky broken play. That's recognition. That's Nick seeing the one-on-one matchup and knowing Evans has won it all night. Salt Lake tied the game 3 separate times in the quarter. Most teams shrink under that kind of pressure. Not them. They kept swinging. And then the last drive. This was clock management, precision, and situational mastery all melted together. Chicago didn't just score. They chose when to score. They bled the clock. They manipulated the secondary. They stayed balanced. They kept Salt Lake guessing the entire drive. You know the play that impressed me the most? The throw to a chain with 7 seconds left. That's not a check down, that's bait. Chicago baited Salt Lake into thinking they were setting up the field goal. And then Caleb said, we're not here to tie, we're here to end it. Everything about that quarter, the rhythm, the play design, the responses, the counter responses. It was like watching 2 heavyweight fighters land haymaker after haymaker, and only one was left standing. That's championship football.
So I'm going to zoom out here because the fourth quarter wasn't just about big plays. It was about psychological fortitude, decision-making under pressure, and how small margins determine championships. Let's start with Salt Lake. They showed something I haven't seen from a young team in a long time: unwavering confidence. They tied the game 3 times in the fourth quarter against the defending champions, who, by the way, have the best offense in NFL history by the numbers. That alone tells you this team is built for big stages. Evans completely dismantled Chicago's secondary, not figuratively, literally dismantled them. When a receiver wins deep 3 times in a quarter, that's not a mismatch, that's domination. Chicago had no answer for him. And Bo Nix trusting that matchup, that's advanced quarterbacking. Now Chicago, their brilliance wasn't in the touchdowns, it was in the responses. Every time Salt Lake punched, Chicago counterpunched immediately. That's the sign of a veteran team that doesn't get shaken. And then the drive with 4 minutes left, that's where the psychology flips. Here's what I noticed. Chicago never got desperate. They never forced anything. They never rushed the tempo. That drive felt slow, intentional, methodical, almost like they were forcing Salt Lake to wonder, are they playing for 3? Are they draining clock? Are they going conservative? That confusion was manufactured. It was strategic. The pass to Loveland on 3rd and 4 was the actual turning point. If Chicago doesn't convert that, Salt Lake gets the ball back with plenty of time. That one play extended the game long enough to give Caleb the final say. And that final touchdown, let me tell you what that was. A team acknowledging reality. They could kick the field goal and risk overtime against a quarterback who just threw 300 yards worth of bombs. Or they could trust their MVP to finish the job. They chose the latter. This fourth quarter wasn't just fireworks. It was 2 teams playing championship caliber football and one quarterback who refused to give the ball back. That's why Chicago won.
Season. Legacy. Okay, let's transition into a bigger picture conversation, because what Caleb Williams just did in the Super Bowl, what he's done over these last 2 years, deserves real, serious consideration. He is a 2-time league MVP, a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. And tonight he put up 513 yards and 6 touchdowns on the biggest stage there is. So the question is, where does Caleb Williams stand right now in the pantheon of NFL quarterbacks, both historically and in the modern game?
Jordan, I want to be careful here because we throw around the word greatness too easily nowadays. But what Caleb Williams has done, not just the numbers, not just the championships, but the way he's done it, that is historical stuff. You mentioned the 513 yards and the 6 touchdowns. You mentioned the 40 for 46. But what really hits me is how many moments this kid already has. Pauses to emphasize. He has the playoff comeback last year. He has the walk-off drive tonight. We're talking 4 minutes left in the Super Bowl, tie game, legacy on the line, and he plays it like he's doing a walkthrough on Wednesday. He has the 17-second drive before halftime. That's myth-making. That is the kind of thing we'll be showing in documentaries 20 years from now. So when you ask me where he ranks today, right now, he's already the greatest Bears quarterback who's ever lived. That's done. That's not a debate. But beyond Chicago, beyond the franchise, if we're talking pure quarterback talent, arm angles, touch mobility, the ability to create off script, the command of the offense, there are only maybe 3 or 4 guys in NFL history who started their careers on this level. Mahomes, Marino, Elway, Luck for a brief moment. That's it. And none of them had this kind of team success this early. So yes, his trajectory is straight up Mount Rushmore if he stays healthy. We are witnessing something rare.
Marcus, I'm with you on the historical comparison, but I want to add something that I think gets overlooked because Caleb makes it look so easy. His processing speed, his accuracy under pressure, his decision-making when the play breaks down, it's elite. Go back to that fourth quarter drive. Every throw he made was textbook. Every read was right. And keep in mind, Salt Lake wasn't playing soft coverage. They were sending pressure. They were disguising looks. They were daring him to make a mistake. And he didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He didn't give them a chance. You can't teach that. That is something you're born with. And Jordan, the stat nobody is talking about, he completed 86% of his passes on 46 attempts in the Super Bowl. That's not just good, that's not just great, that's historic. And the thing is, he's 2 for 2. 2 seasons, 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowls. Nobody does that. Not Brady, not Mahomes, not Peyton, not Montana. So yeah, am I ready to say he's a top 10 talent all time? Yes. Am I ready to say he could finish top 5? Also yes. But the scariest part, he's only 23. He might not even be close to his final form yet.
All right, look, I love Caleb Williams' game, I do. Tonight was incredible, and I'm not taking anything away from the kid. But let me pump the brakes just a little bit, because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves crowning him historically. Yes, back-to-back MVPs, that's amazing. Yes, back-to-back Super Bowls, also amazing. But this Bears offense around him, it matters a lot. He has 3 number 1 caliber weapons. Luther Burden III, 182 yards tonight. Rome Odunze, 3 touchdowns tonight. Colston Loveland, 110 yards and multiple clutch catches. And he has a chain, who they basically turned into Deebo Samuel in the second half. And he has a coaching staff that has built this offense around what he does best. Movement throws, option looks, layered route concepts. So yes, Caleb is phenomenal. But we need to see what happens when the league adjusts, when defenses get more film, when he faces adversity over a long stretch. But with that said, I agree with both of you in principle. He's already Chicago's greatest quarterback ever. And if he keeps this up for 3 more years, he'll be in the greatest of this generation conversation with Mahomes. But I need a little more before I put him in the all-time tier. He's on track, but let's not skip chapters.
So in summary, Marcus says Caleb is already on a historic path. Tyrell says the tape and the stats match the hype. Connor says pump the brakes, but admits the trajectory is elite. This is going to be the story of the offseason. And honestly, it should be. Like, let's flip it over to the Aviators, because this team deserves serious attention. They put up 44 points. Bo Nix threw for 307 yards with 4 touchdowns and no picks. Chris Lyons ran for 151 yards. Timothy Evans was uncoverable on the deep ball. 3 monster plays. This team didn't lose because they weren't good enough. They lost because Chicago is a historically good offense. So where do the Aviators go from here? What's their future look like?
Jordan, they're legit. And not just cute story legit. I mean dangerous legit. If the Bears didn't exist, the Aviators probably win the Super Bowl tonight by 2 scores. Their offense is fully realized. They can run outside zone with Lyons. They can run power with Clarett. They can hit deep shots with Evans and Salim. They have a young quarterback in Bo Nix who doesn't get rattled and doesn't turn the ball over. And I think that's the key. Nick's steadiness. 307 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he responded every single time Chicago scored. That's rare. That's quarterback DNA stuff. If you told me that next year Salt Lake makes the leap from fun offense to full-blown contender, I'd believe it.
I agree with you, Tyrell, but I'll add this. Their ceiling is going to be determined by their defense. The offense is championship ready right now. They just gave the best offense ever everything they could handle. But the defense, man, they're talented, but they're young. They're athletic, but they're inconsistent. And you saw the moment was maybe just a little big for them, especially those final 2 drives. They need a true closer, a veteran leader in the secondary, a defensive identity, because the offense is already set. But the reason they didn't win tonight, the entire reason, is because they couldn't get 1 stop in 17 seconds at the end of the half. And they couldn't get 1 stop in the final 4 minutes. They cleaned that up. This team is right there with Chicago.
Okay, I'm going to be the harsh one, but I think the Aviators have bigger issues. Not fatal issues, but real ones. Number 1, their coaching decisions late in halves need serious work. They got greedy before halftime twice. That cost them at least 10 points. Number 2, they rely a little too much on big plays. Evans is great, but you can't build your entire passing identity on 40-plus yard shots. You need a reliable short game, a possession receiver, someone who keeps chains moving. Number 3, the kicking game. I'm sorry, Victor Longway missing a 31-yarder in the 3rd quarter in a game like this? Unacceptable, especially when you lost by 7. But here's the thing, these are all fixable. And the core of the team, the talent, the quarterback, the system, it's there. And let's be real. They put 44 points on the defending champs and had the lead with 3 minutes left. They're not far. They're not broken. They're just young.
Bo Nix proved tonight that he can win big games, and next year, they might be Chicago's biggest problem. This is a team that is dangerously close to breaking through. And that will do it for us here from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The Chicago Bears repeat as champions. Caleb Williams cements his legacy with one of the greatest postseason performances ever. And the Salt Lake City Aviators, young, explosive, fearless, prove they are here to stay. For Marcus, Tyrell, and Connor, I'm Jordan. This has been the final word from Atlanta. See you next season. Good night.
In the play-by-play, we break it down, every move, every win, every say. Opinions clash, but we stay on the grind. Debate the game until the clock unwinds. Hands in the air when the verdict is shown. Final word anthem, let the whole world know. Final word energy, turn it up right now. Fans going crazy, voice should take, voice show take. We own the moment, breaking every zone. Final word glory, let the world know. Hot takes ready, debate steady. Feel the clash. Flag, break it heavy. Voice the streets, we own the throne. Final word.